By the summer of 1817, Lily Walsh had learned exactly how much space she was allowed to occupy in her mother's house, and it was never enough to be mistaken for importance. The Walsh townhouse in Bloomsbury was narrow, elegant, and arranged for display. In the front rooms, everything shone. French glass, polished mahogany, mirrors set to catch candlelight and multiply it. In the back court, where the laundry steam rose and the mews smelled of hay and damp brick, things were useful rather than pretty. Lily moved between both worlds with the silent precision of a servant and the posture of a lady, which suited Mrs. Walsh perfectly. "You are useful here," her mother said one grey morning as Lily finished copying invitations in a neat, unshowy hand. Mrs. Walsh sat before the breakfast fire in dark silk that never seemed to wrinkle, her face as smooth and unmoved as if expression were an indulgence she had long ago surrendered. "Useful girls do not require opinions," Lily murmured. "No, ma'am," though she had not offered one. It was always like this, a correction before any fault, a warning before any wish. Her father's death had left her a small inheritance held in trust until she reached her majority. Her mother held practical control over access, disbursements, signatures, and all the little clerical doors by which money appeared or vanished. Lily had long stopped asking what amount remained. Questions made her mother's voice go flatter. When bills for her brother Thomas's apprenticeship came due in Suffolk, they were paid, but always with a pause, always after some reminder that generosity had conditions. "If you prove difficult, Mrs. Walsh had told her the previous winter while folding a letter as if it bored her. "Your brother's master might discover a delay in funds. Boys in workshops do not thrive on uncertainty." Lily had understood then that obedience was being purchased with Thomas's future. By 10 o'clock, the house filled with motion. Footmen went out with cards, cook argued over fish, and Lily's younger half-sister, Arabella, practiced curtsies before a pier glass in a froth of pale blue muslin. Arabella was 17, pretty in the fashionable way of the season, and given to small, delighted exclamations whenever an invitation arrived from a house with a title above Viscount. "Do stand back, Lily," she said kindly, not unkindly, as their maid pinned lace at her sleeve. "Mama says the white satin is mine for Lady Bellham's tonight." "Of course," Lily said. She herself had been allotted a gown the colour of old rose, expertly altered from one of Mrs. Walsh's former evening dresses, fine enough to signal respectability, modest enough to promise no rivalry. She would stand a step behind Arabella when presented. She would speak when spoken to. She would vanish when convenience required it. In drawing rooms, she had been introduced every possible way a person might be made smaller. "This is my elder daughter," when no one important listened. "This is a relation," when questions threatened. "This is my companion," when someone asked too directly why a well-bred young woman seemed to have no prospects. And once, in an overheated room in Mayfair, when laughter ran too loud and too sharp, Mrs. Walsh had said with a little airy wave, "Oh, Lily, no one at all." People had smiled, some had looked embarrassed, none had corrected it. The only person in the household who spoke to Lily as if her mind existed was the new gardener. He had been hired in spring for the mews plot and back court, replacing a man who drank and forgot to prune. Mr. Reed limped slightly on his left side and wore coats too rough for fashion and too well cut for accident. His hands were scarred and calloused, nails clean, speech plain. He called her Miss Walsh, never Mrs., never pet names, never the vague ma'am servants used when they had not been taught proper forms. That afternoon, Lily escaped the close heat of the workroom and crossed to the yard where he was staking climbing roses against the wall. "You've tied those canes too tightly," she said, then winced at her own boldness. He glanced up, dark-haired, expression unreadable. Have I? They bruise if they cannot move. She stepped nearer and pointed. A little room at the knot. He looked at the tie, then loosened it without argument. You are right. Few people ever said so to her. It startled a laugh from her. Mister, Reed's mouth tilted, not quite a smile. Your mother receives heavy post from Lincoln's Inn these days. Lily stilled. You notice legal stationery? I notice everything that comes damp through rain and smells of sealing wax and worry. He set down his twine. 3 letters this week from men who are paid to say things nobody wants written plainly. You speak as if you've met solicitors in battle. I've seen figures used as weapons, he said. Then, in the same practical tone, and Parliament sits restless. There is muttering of reform and muttering against it, which means men of property are nervous. Nervous men press for quick marriages and cleaner ledgers. That was not Gardner's talk. Lily studied him, seeing again what had troubled her before, the precision of his questions, the way he listened not down, but across. Who are you, Mr. Reed? She asked softly. He picked up the spade. At present, your mother's man for weeds. A beat. You should wear stronger shoes if you are to cross this yard after dark. The stones tilt near the drain. He returned to work as if he had said nothing strange at all. By evening, Lady Bellam's house on Grosvenor Square blazed with candles, carriages queued in a glittering serpent, powdered footmen shouted names through the crush. Inside, the assembly moved in tides of silk and scent and polished boots, music skimming over voices like wind over water. Lily took her assigned place half a pace behind Arabella, while Mrs. Walsh surveyed the room with calm appetite. Where another woman might have looked eager, Mrs. Walsh merely looked efficient. There, she said, touching Arabella's wrist. Lord Finchley's aunt. Smile, but not all your teeth. Lily, do not speak unless addressed. They advanced through clusters of acquaintances. Arabella laughed on cue. Mrs. Walsh dispensed charm with exacting thrift. Lily felt herself becoming transparent in the usual manner, a body in satin occupying air. Then Lady Bellam, all feathers and diamonds, swept them toward a circle near the musicians, men with starched neckcloths, a vice-countess with sharp eyes, and 3 gentlemen Lily recognized by title if not by intimacy. The Earl of Wrexham, broad-shouldered and fair. The Earl of Danebridge, narrow and keen-faced. And the Earl of Harcourt, older, silver at the temples, his gaze habitually amused. Mrs. Walsh, Lady Bellam trilled. And these angels? Mrs. Walsh placed a hand at Arabella's back. My younger daughter, Arabella. A pause, a turn of her head toward Lily, no larger than one might grant a vase. This is Lily, no one of consequence. It was said lightly, almost as a joke. That made it worse. Lily felt the words strike and settle like ash. The Viscountess laughed into her fan. Arabella's smile faltered, then recovered. Mrs. Walsh had already turned away to discuss a card party. She might have stood there all evening, invisible by command, had Wrexham not stepped forward almost at once. Miss Lily, he said, bowing, will you dance? For a moment she thought he mocked her. His expression held no mockery, only a curious steadiness, as if he had made a decision before crossing the room. Yes. Thank you, my lord. The set began. Lily moved through the figures with the caution of someone walking on uncertain ice, aware of glances gathering. Wrexham spoke little beyond required civility, yet he danced with attentive courtesy that implied recognition, not charity. At the close, as she turned to withdraw, another voice cut in. If Miss Lily is not otherwise engaged, said Danebridge, bow already in motion, I should be honoured. Wrexham's brows rose a fraction. By all means, The second dance drew a visible ring of attention. Fans paused mid-air. Two gentlemen near the card tables stopped speaking entirely. Danebridge, sharper in manner than Wrexham, asked her whether she enjoyed poetry, whether she preferred London or country air, whether she believed first impressions usually true. "I have not been invited to form many first impressions," Lily said before caution could stop her. "Then tonight remedies an injustice," he replied. When that set ended, she saw Harcourt waiting by the musicians with unmistakable impatience, one gloved hand tapping his thigh in time with the violins. "Miss Lily," he said when she approached, "I fear I have been kept from claiming this dance by men with no sense of fairness." There was laughter nearby, strained and bright. The hush that followed seemed to travel outward through the ballroom in ripples. A woman Lily had met twice leaned to whisper furiously to her companion. Lady Bellam's smile sharpened to predatory delight. Mrs. Walsh across the room went very still. By midnight, the thing had transformed from curiosity to event. A matron she barely knew squeezed her hand and called her dear child, with avid eyes. A baronet's wife asked too casually whether Lily had cousins in Yorkshire. A gentleman inquired if she favoured Hanoverian policy. 2 invitations were pressed upon her in 1/4 hour. One was for tea, the other for a musicale and, perhaps, interrogation. At supper she overheard her own name paired with phrases like secret portion, hidden settlement, and ministerial connection. No one asked Lily directly what any of it meant. They asked everyone else. The ride home rattled over cobbles in suffocating silence. Arabella fidgeted with her gloves. Mrs. Walsh sat opposite, spine straight, face unreadable in the carriage lantern's dim sway. At last, in that same bloodless tone she used for household accounts, she said, "You will explain this." Lily met her mother's gaze. "I cannot explain men I barely know asking for dances." "You will not enjoy it," Mrs. Walsh said. No raised voice, no scene. The quiet frightened Lily more than shouting could have done. When they returned to Bloomsbury, the hall lamps were low. Lily went upstairs, cold despite the heat, and found her writing desk in her chamber already altered. The small brass key was gone from its ribbon. The lock had been turned. Within minutes, Mrs. Walsh appeared at the door as if summoned by Lily's realization. She held a ring of household keys and removed one without ceremony. "Your correspondence will pass through me for now," she said, "until this absurdity is corrected. That desk contains letters from Thomas. Then he may write to me." Lily took a step forward. "You have no right." Mrs. Walsh's eyes did not sharpen. They simply emptied. "Do not speak to me of rights while your brother's apprenticeship invoices remain in my keeping." She set the key back on the ring and left. Lily stood in the dim room listening to retreating footsteps, every muscle rigid. Outside, a carriage rolled past and faded. Somewhere below stairs, a maid laughed softly at some joke in the servants' hall. Ordinary life continuing as if nothing had shifted. Yet everything had. By morning, the house felt like a courtroom. Notes arrived before breakfast, then more by noon. Embossed cards, polite inquiries, invitations edged with curiosity. Mrs. Walsh received them all at the sideboard and sorted them into piles without offering Lily so much as a glance. Those addressed to Miss Lily Walsh were opened with a letter knife and read in silence before being placed face down. Arabella, pale and overbright, tried once to speak on Lily's behalf. "Mamma, perhaps Lily should answer Lady Eastcombe herself." "No," said Mrs. Walsh. Arabella subsided. Lily ate dry toast she could not taste. Every clink of china seemed amplified. At last she said, "Thomas writes monthly. If you intercept his letters, he will worry." If he worries, he will work harder. Mrs. Walsh spread marmalade with exact strokes. Concern is not fatal. You use him to govern me. Mrs. Walsh looked up then, and for a heartbeat Lily saw not anger but calculation, as if evaluating market risk. I use what is available, she said, as any sensible guardian does. The word lodged like a shard. Guardian. As if Lily were 10, not a woman near legal majority. As if personhood could be postponed indefinitely when money required it. By afternoon, rumours had thickened enough to produce consequence. A card arrived from Lord Kettering's household requesting the favour of a private call regarding future felicities. Kettering was wealthy, widowed, and spoken of as solvent in the way one discussed a bank. Stable, impersonal, faintly cold. Lily had met him twice. Both times he had looked at her as though estimating dimensions. Mrs. Walsh did not hide her satisfaction. How promptly society finds practical uses for novelty. I am not a novelty. No, her mother said, rising. You are decorative. The distinction matters. When Lily sought air in the back court near dusk, she found Mr. Reed coiling hose by the pump. He saw her face and straightened, saying nothing until she spoke. She has taken my letters, locked my desk. Kettering has called. Mr. Reed's jaw tightened just once. Then the room has shown its hand sooner than expected. Expected by whom? She demanded. Did you know this would happen? I knew attention is never free. His gaze flicked toward the lit kitchen windows, toward the house that held her like a clasp. You need allies, Miss Walsh, not sympathy, witnesses. I have none. You have your own memory, he said. Dates, figures, words spoken in front of others. Keep them, quietly. It was advice, too, pointed for a gardener again, but his voice carried no condescension, only urgency. If I defy her, Lily whispered, Thomas pays. If you do nothing, he said, you do. The clock in the passage struck 6. Lily looked back at the house where her name could be erased with a sentence and her future settled over marmalade. She understood with cold clarity what was at risk now. Not merely a humiliating marriage, nor even the theft of money that should have secured her brother and herself, but the final, formal sealing of her own non-existence. Once contracted, once transferred, once renamed and accounted for, she would spend the rest of her life as she had spent this season. Useful, silent, no one. At dinner that night, Mrs. Walsh laid down her napkin and spoke as if reading from an inventory list. You will marry Lord Kettering, she said. He is solvent. You are decorative. Lily set down her fork with deliberate care. Across the table, the candles made her mother's face look carved from pale wax, all smooth planes and no warmth. Arabella sat rigid beside her, eyes fixed on her plate as if etiquette might become armour if she concentrated hard enough. You speak as though you are ordering wallpaper, Lily said. Mrs. Walsh lifted her wineglass and took a measured sip. Do not be theatrical. Lord Kettering has rank, liquidity, and no troublesome romantic expectations. You will be comfortable. Comfortable where? In his house, naturally, preferably before Michaelmas. Arabella's breath caught. Before, Mama, that is very soon. Precisely why it is useful, said Mrs. Walsh. Interest cools, gossip curdles. We move before either can set. Lily heard the scrape of her own chair as she stood. I have not accepted him. Mrs. Walsh did not look up. You have not been asked in a way that permits refusal. The words were so flat they seemed to absorb sound around them. Lily remained standing another beat, waiting for anger, for cruelty sharpened into obvious malice, something she could fight cleanly. None came. Mrs. Walsh reached for the salt as if discussing weather. "You will receive him in the blue drawing room tomorrow at 11, she said. "Wear pearl, not garnet. Garnet suggests temper." Lily left before she could answer and felt Arabella's frightened gaze follow her out. At 11 the next morning, Lord Kettering arrived precisely on time and precisely as rumoured. Elegant, controlled, and entirely devoid of curiosity about any soul but his own. He bowed to Lily with practised courtesy that did not reach his eyes. "Miss Walsh, you are looking very well after your public triumph." "If that is triumph," Lily said, "I should be sorry to see disaster." A ghost of a smile touched his mouth. "Spirited. My late wife was spirited for the first year." He seated himself only after she sat, then spoke not of books or music or weather, but of arrangements. His house in Berkeley Square, his sister who supervised his table, his expectation of calm domestic order. His gaze travelled once around the room and returned to her with the same appraising coolness Lily had seen before. "I understand," he said lightly. "There has been confusion regarding your portion." "My what?" "Your fortune, Miss Walsh. These matters grow hazy in society conversation. I prefer clarity." He said it as if discussing wine stock. Lily folded her hands so he would not see them tense. "Then perhaps you should ask my mother's solicitor." "Already done," he rose. "I am not a man who purchases blind." When he bowed and took his leave, Lily remained seated, pulse beating hard in her throat. Purchases, clarity, no troublesome romantic expectations. Mrs. Walsh had not exaggerated, she had advertised. By luncheon, 2 notes had arrived bearing the seals of Wrexham and Danebridge. They were impeccably polite, maddeningly empty. "Miss Walsh, I trust you are in good health after Lady Bellam's crowded evening. I remain your obedient servant." No explanation. No reference to the storm they had started with 3 dances and 3 bows. A third card came later from Harcourt, with a line in his own hand. "Society has an appetite for mystery, and a poor stomach for truth. If ever you require a witness to civility, command me. Witness." The word pricked like a pin. Mrs. Walsh opened all 3 before Lily ever touched them and passed them over with fingers dry as paper. "How flattering," she said. "How inconvenient." Inconvenient became policy. Lily's outings were curtailed. Calls were supervised. Even in the mornings, if she walked in Russell Square, she was accompanied by a maid instructed to remain close enough to hear conversation. At breakfast, Mrs. Walsh began discussing settlement language in front of her as if she were absent. "Jointure at my discretion," she told no one in particular, buttering toast. "No immediate transfer until proof of stable management. Kettering will object. Let him. He can be handled." Lily looked up sharply. "My inheritance is not yours to negotiate." Mrs. Walsh spread jam to the edge of the crust. "Everything in this house is mine to negotiate until law says otherwise." "And when does law say otherwise?" "When I choose to ask it." It was the most honest thing she had said in years. Lily began keeping notes on scraps of discarded invitations and the blank backs of circulars. Dates, sums mentioned, names of clerks, phrases remembered exactly. She hid them inside the hem of an old shawl in her wardrobe. At night, she lay awake rehearsing conversations so they would not blur. Memory, Mr. Reed had said. Dates, figures, words spoken before others. She found him 2 days later in the back court, trimming laurel with ruthless economy. "I need access to the household accounts," she said without preamble. He did not stop cutting. "Which ones?" "My trust disbursements, my father's correspondence, anything sent from Lincoln's Inn in the last 5 years. Now he paused and lowered the shears. "There is a locked cabinet in your mother's morning room. Walnut, brass corners, lower left shelf. She keeps legal papers there after breakfast and before calls. You have seen inside it. I have seen where she puts the key. His expression did not change. Pinned in the lining of the black reticule she carries to church. She believes piety is camouflage. Lily stared. How do you know that? Because men and women who hide thefts rely on habit. He met her gaze. Do you want outrage, Miss Walsh, or proof? Proof. Then you will need copies, not originals. If papers vanish, she tightens everything. Copies how? My desk is locked. She counts my writing paper. There is a copying press in the old steward's closet by the back stair. Neglected, not broken. I can make it usable. I can. Not one could. Not the servants might. As if he had done this before. Lily took a breath. If we are discovered, she will dismiss you. She will do worse than dismiss me if she has sense. His mouth bent faintly. Proceeding remains your choice. It should have frightened her more than it did. Instead, she felt something she had not felt in months. Direction. Tonight, she said, after she takes laudanum. That night, rain threatened but did not fall, leaving the air tight and metallic. Mrs. Walsh retired early with a headache and her usual half-glass of tonic. Arabella went to bed after an anxious kiss to Lily's cheek and a whisper, "Please do not do anything dreadful," as if Lily were the unpredictable one in the house. At 11:30, Lily slipped from her room in stockings and wrapped a dark shawl over her nightdress. Mr. Reed waited in the service passage, coat off, shirt sleeves rolled, a shuttered lantern in one hand. "This way," he murmured. They moved like conspirators through a house built to betray sound. Every stair seemed to creak under Lily's weight, no matter where she placed her feet. In the morning room, moonlight silvered the edge of the escritoire and the locked walnut cabinet below the bookshelves. Mr. Reed knelt, withdrew a slim packet of tools from his pocket, and looked up once. "Last chance." "Open it." It took less than a minute. Inside lay bundles tied with tape, sealed packets, ledgers slim and thick. Lily's hands shook as she drew out the nearest book and held it to the lantern slit. Columns of figures marched down the page in tidy clerk script. Dates, names, amounts transferred from Miss L. Walsh Trust into a household account marked domestic contingencies. Contingencies, Lily thought wildly. My gloves, Arabella's ribbons, coal, servants' liveries. She turned pages faster. Several entries had her guardian's countersignature, supposedly her mother's right. Others bore initials that did not match any hand she knew. "Here," she whispered. "These are wrong." Mr. Reed leaned in. "Copy the page numbers first, then the dates, then amounts." They carried armfuls to the old steward's closet where a dust-clogged copying press sat beneath moth-eaten coats. Reed had already cleaned the plate and wetted paper. He worked with swift competence, laying sheets, turning screw, lifting mirror images of ink before they dried. "You have done this before," Lily said under her breath. "Yes." "For whom?" "For people no one believed." She swallowed and kept writing. An hour passed, then another. They copied ledgers, letters from a firm in Chancery, and one folded affidavit draft never submitted, alleging that Miss Lily Walsh had shown nervous instability and limited numerical comprehension, and was therefore ill-suited to independent management of moneys. Lily had to grip the table edge until her vision steadied. "She planned this," she said. "If I objected, she would call me unwell." She still may. Near 3 o'clock, while Reed reset a press plate, Lily opened a narrow packet tied in blue thread and found 3 guardian authorization letters bearing the signature of Mr. Edward Hale, one of her late father's trustees. The first looked genuine. The second and third dated 18 months after Hale's documented death, bore the same name in a stiff, hesitant hand unlike the first. Dear God. Reed looked over and went still. Put those aside. We copy every line. A board creaked in the corridor. Both froze. Footsteps, light and uncertain, approached the closet door. Lily blew out the lantern slit by instinct. Darkness dropped around them like cloth. The latch stirred once, then stopped. Lily. Arabella's sleepy whisper came through the panel. Are you there? Lily could not breathe. After a long moment, Arabella yawned, muttered something about drafts, and padded away. Only when the sound faded entirely did Lily relight the lantern, hand unsteady. Reed watched her face. This is what harder looks like, he said quietly. Every move risks someone you care for. By dawn, they had copied what they could and returned each original precisely to place. Reed relocked the cabinet. Lily tucked the copies into oilskin and hid them in a hollow behind loose brick in the mews wall he had shown her, where damp would not reach. At breakfast, Mrs. Walsh appeared unruffled, if paler than usual, and announced without flourish, Lord Kettering's man will call this afternoon to review settlement terms. You will remain available. Lily forced herself to sip tea. Am I to be measured like drapery? Mrs. Walsh buttered toast. Drapery has less tendency to argue. The afternoon brought Mr. Phelps, Kettering's steward, and a narrow-faced legal clerk with ink-stained cuffs. They conferred in the library with Mrs. Walsh for over an hour, while Lily sat in the adjoining drawing room pretending to read, hearing fragments through the door. Encumbrances, restricted access until transfer, brothers' training costs considered discretionary. When she entered on the pretense of requesting sealing wax, the clerk fell abruptly silent and looked at her with pity quickly masked. That evening she received a note from Thomas at last, forwarded, opened, and resealed. The crease was wrong. Someone had unfolded it too many times. His cheerful hand filled the page with workshop triumphs. A lock mechanism mastered, a foreman's rare praise. A request for thicker socks, come autumn. At the bottom, cramped in the margin, a second line. Master says account was late this month, but settled now. Did I do something amiss? Lily pressed the paper to her lips until anger tasted like iron. 3 days later, the rain finally broke over London in hard, slanting sheets, turning carriage ruts to black ribbons. Mrs. Walsh refused all callers and kept to her rooms with correspondence. Reed was absent from the yard after noon, which was unusual enough that Lily noticed, then noticed again at 4 and again at dusk when the stable boy said, Gardener's gone to fetch loam, miss, with eyes that slid away. Fetch loam in a storm. At 7, Lily told the housemaid she had a headache and retired. At 7:30 she put on her walking shoes, dark cloak and plain bonnet and slipped out through the mews gate while thunder muttered over the square. She told herself she went for air. She followed him from a distance through wet streets and gaslit blur, keeping to awnings and shadow. Reed moved with his slight limp, but at a pace too sure for errand running, crossing St. James's with the confidence of a man who belonged wherever he chose to step. He turned not toward any nursery yard or supplier, but toward the discreet side lane near White's. Lily stopped beneath a dripping cornice, heart pounding. White's was no place for gardeners. A side door opened before he knocked. A liveried porter bowed him in. For one clear instant before the door closed, lamplight spilled across an antechamber where 3 figures waited. Wrexham by the hearth, Danebridge with arms folded, Harcourt beside the table. All 3 straightened as Reed entered. My lord, Harcourt said distinctly, his voice carrying in the rain-hushed alley. At last, the door shut. Lily stood motionless while water soaked the hem of her gown. Her first sensation was not surprise, but a savage, almost relieved certainty, as if the world had finally admitted the lie she had been breathing for months. Mr. Reed the gardener. Mr. Reed, who passed parliamentary tension and lock mechanisms and forged signatures in one glance. Mr. Reed, who asked no permission to advise her as an equal. My lord. She did not remember deciding to move. One moment she was in the alley, the next she was in the lane mouth, waiting. He emerged 20 minutes later with hat low against the rain, paused when he saw her and did not pretend accident. "Miss Walsh," he said. She laughed once without humour. "Is that still my name to you? Or have you another filed away?" "Lily!" "Do not." She stepped closer, rain striking her face like thrown pebbles. "Who are you?" He removed his gloves slowly, as if granting the question its full due. "Alistair Reed, Marquess of Northmere." The title landed between them, absurd and heavy. "You were weeding my mother's borders. I was watching her house. You let me speak to you of humiliation while you played at rough coats and twine." His jaw tightened. "I did not play at your humiliation." "No?" Her voice shook now, anger and hurt braided tight. "Lady Bellam's ball was your design, then? 3 earls descending on no one of consequence like hawks. Do you know what followed? Doors shut, letters seized. A marriage arranged as if I were livestock." "I know," he said quietly. "I expected pressure. I did not expect her to move this quickly." "You expected?" She stared at him. "So yes, it was arranged." "Yes." Rain hammered the cobbles. A carriage splashed past the lane opening, wheels hissing. He went on before she could strike him with words again. "Women erased in drawing rooms are erased in court twice as fast. No one is easy to declare unstable, ungrateful, fanciful. Public notice creates friction. It forces witnesses to remember your face when papers appear with lies attached. Wrexham, Danebridge, Harcourt. They did what I asked because they understand what guardianship abuses look like when dressed as propriety." She folded her arms against a sudden cold deeper than rain. "You might have told me. If I had, your reactions at Bellam's would have been measured, rehearsed. People smell rehearsal and call it intrigue. Spontaneity bought credibility." He said it like strategy briefed before battle, and that, more than the title, made her want to both strike him and listen. "What are you doing truly?" she asked. "In my house." "Investigating a network of solicitors, guardians and titled suitors who siphon female trusts through legal fog, then force marriage before accounts can be challenged. Your mother's correspondence touched 3 names already under quiet inquiry. Kettering's steward touched 2 more. Lily thought of the forged Hale signature, the unsent affidavit describing her as numerically incompetent, Thomas's delayed account. Her anger did not lessen. It changed shape. "And me?" His answer came without hesitation. "At first you were a possible victim with access. Then you were the only person in that house who asked servants their names and noticed where money moved. I needed to know whether you would endure or act." She flinched as if slapped. "So I was tested." "You were observed," he said, "as I was by you." For a long moment they faced each other in the rain, stripped of pretense at last. He spoke again, lower. "If you accuse Mrs. Walsh tomorrow with what you have now, society will call you emotional, manipulated, perhaps unwell. Kettering will proceed before doubt settles. You need authenticated copies, trustees present, and men of rank willing to state publicly that they saw grounds before scandal broke. I can provide some of that." "Some." "The rest must come from you, your records, your testimony, your choice." Thunder rolled overhead. Lily looked past him at white-shuttered windows, where decisions about people like her were usually made without her. She looked back at the man who had lied to enter her prison and handed her tools to map it. "I do not forgive you," she said. "I did not ask you to. And you will not reveal yourself in this matter unless I say so." A beat, then, "Agreed. If my name is used again as bait, I walk away, even if it ruins me." His expression sharpened with something like respect. "Understood." Lily drew her cloak tighter and stepped back toward the street. "Then hear me clearly, Lord Northmere. I will not be rescued like a parcel from a fire. I will build this case myself. You may assist when summoned." He bowed his head once, rain running from the brim of his hat. "As you wish, Miss Walsh." This time the title sounded different. Less disguise, more acknowledgement. Lily turned into the storm and walked home alone, every step cold, furious, and newly certain that no one was finished. Lily reached the mews gate with rain running down her back and her bonnet ribbons stuck to her throat. She had one hand on the latch when she saw light under the morning-room door. At this hour the front of the house should have been dark. She entered anyway, left wet footprints on the black-and-white tiles, and turned to find Mrs. Walsh seated upright in a straight-backed chair, as if she had been posed there by an undertaker. A single lamp burned at her elbow. Her gloves were still on. "You have been out," she said. Lily pulled back her hood. "Yes." "With whom?" "In weather, mostly." Mrs. Walsh's gaze moved from Lily's dripping hem to her muddied shoes and settled on her face. "I sent Collins after you." Of course she had. Lily felt the admission like a hand closing on her windpipe. "Collins lost me at St. James's," she said. "For 11 minutes. Mrs. Walsh folded her hands. "Long enough to stand in an alley beside a gentleman's side entrance." Lily did not answer. Mrs. Walsh went on in the same mild voice. "Do you imagine I have maintained this house by trusting appearances? I trust patterns. Yours has altered." The room smelled faintly of lamp oil and wet wool. Somewhere upstairs, a board creaked in Arabella's chamber. "I walked," Lily said. "That is all." "Then hear me clearly." Mrs. Walsh rose. "There will be no more walking, no more gardens, no unsupervised letters, no private callers, no accidental disappearances through mews gates. Lord Kettering and I have agreed to advance the contract dinner to Thursday." Thursday? It was Monday night. Urgency suits everyone except women who confuse delay with power. Mrs. Walsh took one step nearer. "You will be agreeable. Dr. Sibley calls tomorrow to assess your nerves, and if he reports agitation, I shall be forced to manage your exposure for your own welfare." The threat was almost elegant in its economy. Hysteria, seclusion, legal silencing. Lily's voice came out low. "You mean to call me unfit before I can challenge you?" "I mean to prevent spectacle." Mrs. Walsh turned toward the stairs, then paused. "And because I dislike uncertainty, I wrote to your brother's master this evening. Payment for next quarter remains unsigned. Compliance restores it." Lily moved before she could think, fingers digging into the chair back between them. "You would ruin Thomas to force me to the altar." Mrs. Walsh looked at her hand as if it were a stain on furniture. "I would preserve my household from chaos. If you insist on naming that ruin, you may." When she left, she took the lamp with her. Lily remained in the half-dark, breath shaking, listening to the retreat of her mother's measured steps. By dawn, she was in the back court prying at the loose brick in the mews wall with chilled fingers. The cavity was empty. For one disbelieving second, she dug deeper, scraping knuckles against mortar, certain she had missed the angle. Nothing. No oilskin packet, no copied ledgers, no forged signatures. Rain had not taken it. Someone had. Looking for something? Lily jerked around. Arabella stood in a wrapper and slippers beneath the kitchen stair, hair unpinned, eyes huge. "You frightened me." I could say the same. Arabella glanced toward the house and came closer. "Mamma has put Hill, the new maid, outside your room at night. She says it is to keep drafts from troubling you." Lily almost laughed. "How tender." Arabella's mouth trembled. "Lily, what are you doing?" "Trying not to disappear." Arabella swallowed. "I did not tell her you were out. I swear it. But Collins did come in drenched and whispering. Mama sent him off before breakfast with a note for Kettering." Lily looked down at her scraped fingers, then back at her sister. Arabella had always been pliant, not cruel, trained to please, trained to survive. In another house, she might have grown brave in ordinary ways. Here, bravery had to be learned all at once. "I need a favor," Lily said. Arabella went pale. "What kind?" "The kind that lets me keep my name." By noon, Lily had learned how quickly a trap could close. Arabella managed the first task. She drew Mrs. Walsh into an argument about trimmings in the front drawing room, long enough for Lily to slip into the service passage and out to the lane. She reached the apothecary on King Street, where she and Northmere had agreed, through a single line left with the flower seller's boy, to exchange messages without names. He was already there, hat low, examining bottles in the window as if uncertain between tinctures. "The packet's gone," Lily said without greeting. His head turned sharply. "Taken." "Not lost, taken. My mother had Collins follow me last night." A muscle worked once in his cheek. "Then she knows there is something to find, even if she does not know what." "She knows enough." Lily forced herself to keep her voice level. "She moved the contract dinner to Thursday. She has summoned a physician to pronounce me unstable if needed, and she has suspended Thomas's funds." Damn. The word came under his breath, unvarnished. "What now?" "Now we rebuild from originals and outside records." He spoke quickly, thinking aloud. "Wrexham can pull registry copies if transfers were filed. Harcourt knows a clerk at Lincoln's Inn who owes him money and discretion. Danebridge can lean on Kettering's steward through gaming debt." "Lean? Quietly?" "As quietly as possible." Lily met his eyes. "No grand revelations. Not yet." "I remember our agreement." He reached into his coat and drew out a folded sheet. "I sent this at dawn to Mr. Fenton, one of your trustees. He is in town." Lily took it, then stilled at the seal on a second envelope in his hand, already broken. "What is that?" He hesitated, and in that hesitation, she knew. "Give it to me." It was from Thomas's master, written in a blunt business hand. "Miss Walsh, as premiums due under your brother's indenture remain unsettled and assurances withdrawn by Mrs. Walsh, I cannot continue instruction at my own risk. Your brother has been released from work until account rectified. His tools are retained against debt." Below, in smaller script, perhaps added after second thought, "The lad is industrious. This is no fault of his." The street blurred for a moment. Lily folded the letter once, carefully, as if neatness could prevent collapse. "He's been turned out," she said, "because of me." "Because of her," Northmere corrected. "Because she can use him against me. That is the same thing." A carriage rattled past, splashing muddy water across the curb. Neither moved. "We can still move first," he said. "Tonight, if possible. Are the originals still in the cabinet?" "I do not know. I cannot get near it in daylight." "Then at night." Now guarded, his gaze sharpened. "By whom?" "Everyone." For the first time since she had known him, uncertainty crossed his face without disguise. "I will get word to the Earls," he said, "and to Fenton. Hold until evening. Do nothing alone." Lily gave a short, bitter laugh. "I am always alone in that house." She returned before 1 o'clock and found Dr. Sibley in the blue drawing room, a plump man with polished boots and professionally sorrowful eyes. Mrs. Walsh sat beside him with her hands folded like a mourner's. "Ah, Miss Walsh," the doctor said, "your mother reports fatigue, irregular sleep, excitable feelings." "My mother reports strategy," Lily said. Mrs. Walsh did not flinch. "You see," the doctor asked bland questions while taking no real note of answers, only of tone. Did she cry unexpectedly? Was she preoccupied with grievances? Did she imagine conspiracies concerning her property? By the end, Lily wanted to overturn his instrument case into the fire. When he left, he bowed to Mrs. Walsh and said, "Rest and reduced stimulation are prudent." "Prudent," Mrs. Walsh repeated, as if savouring the word. That night brought the second blow. With Arabella posted at the landing to cough if anyone approached, Lily and a kitchen maid she had bribed with her last pair of pearl drops crept into the morning room after midnight. The walnut cabinet stood where it always had. Northmere's tools were gone. Lily used a hairpin and a prayer and managed the lock on the third try. Inside were devotional tracts, old household menus, and 2 years of harmless coal invoices. Nothing else. Every ledger, every letter, every damaging scrap had vanished. Arabella appeared at the door, face white. "Lily, Mama is awake." They barely reached the corridor before Mrs. Walsh stepped from the shadows, in a wrapper the colour of smoke, candle held steady. "Arabella," she said, as if discussing weather, "pack for your aunts in Bath. You leave at 6. Arabella made a small sound. "Mama, please." "You will not please me. You will go." Then to Lily, "You have contaminated your sister with disobedience. Consider this your final warning." When Arabella was gone at dawn, the house seemed larger and more hostile, as if one bright fabric had been stripped from the walls. Lily sat on her bed with Thomas's letter in her lap and felt, for the first time, the clean edge of despair. Her copies were gone. Her originals were gone. Her sister was exiled. Her brother was out of work. Dr. Sibley had supplied language to lock her away if she resisted. She had wanted to build her own case. Now she could not even prove where the bricks had once held paper. Alistair Reid, Marquess of Northmere, had spent years training his face to stillness. In Parliament, galleries where men traded human ruin for votes, in club rooms where jokes were made about dowries as if they were livestock futures, in sick rooms in Spain where officers pretended boys were not dying because acknowledging it cost morale. Stillness had never meant calm. In his library that night, he stood at the mantel with his cane braced against his bad leg and reread Lily's 3-line message until the paper softened at the folds. Copies taken. Cabinet cleared. Arabella sent away. Thomas expelled from apprenticeship. No signature, none needed. Harcourt lounged in the armchair opposite with deceptive ease, silver at his temples catching firelight. Wrexham stood by the window, shoulders set like a man preparing to break a door. Danebridge sat at the desk, sorting notes into ruthless little stacks. "Well," Danebridge said, "say something useful, Northmere." Alistair kept his eyes on the grate. "Useful. Walsh is escalating because she is afraid. Fear creates mistakes." Harcourt snorted softly. "And unuseful." Alistair closed his hand on the letter. "Unuseful is that I underestimated her speed and cost Lily dearly." Silence moved through the room. Wrexham spoke first. "You could still end this by stepping in publicly. Name yourself, call in half the city. And confirm every whisper that she was manipulated by a hidden patron?" Alistair turned. "No. If I eclipse her now, Walsh paints her as a puppet and we hand Kettering his defence." Danebridge tapped the desk with one finger. "You are talking law." I asked for truth. Alistair did not answer at once. His leg throbbed in damp weather, a deep old ache from Talavera that flared whenever he stood too long. Tonight, it felt like memory, with teeth. At last he said, "Truth is, I have done this before. Watched, timed, waited for clean proof while damage accumulated in real lives. My sister sent 3 letters before I came home. I answered none in time." Harcourt's expression changed. Amusement gone. Wrexham looked away toward the rain-streaked pane. Alistair continued, voice rougher than he liked. "Eleanor's guardian sold her portion in pieces and married her to a man who wanted acreage, not wife. By the time I challenged it, she was dead in childbed and every ledger was mislaid. So yes, I built an inquiry. Yes, I learned to enter houses in rough coats and ask quiet questions. And yes, I chose strategy over comfort at Bellams, because comfort has buried too many women politely." No one spoke for several beats. Then Harcourt said, gently for once, "And this one?" Alistair looked at the letter in his hand. Rain struck the window like thrown seed. "This one looks at me as if titles are excuses," he said. "She is right often enough to be dangerous." Wrexham's mouth twitched despite himself. "You are in love with her." Alistair gave a short laugh with no humour. "I am compromised by her. Love is a word men use when they think desire absolves them." Dainbridge rose and held out a document. "Then be compromised usefully," Fenton has replied. "He suspected irregularities years ago but lacked access. He will appear if shown hard evidence and protected from public mockery." Harcourt added, "And my clerk at Lincoln's Inn has located filing abstracts." Walsh moved substantial sums through a shell account under household maintenance. Legal enough on paper, indecent in fact. Wrexham set a fresh envelope on the mantel. "Kettering's steward paid a physician 2 guineas yesterday. Might be Sibley. Might be another." Alistair took the envelope, then reached for his cane. "We are out of time." As the others moved to leave, Harcourt paused at the door. "You cannot save her by controlling her, Alistair." He nodded once. "I know." When they were gone, he remained alone in the firelit room and, against his own rule, let himself imagine Lily hearing the truth of Eleanor and turning away anyway. It was not the loss of courtship that tightened his chest. It was the possibility that she would be swallowed by the same machinery he had failed to stop once before. He sat at the desk and wrote to her in plain hand, "I cannot promise safety, only that you will not stand unwitnessed." He sanded the page, sealed it without crest, and sent it before dawn. Thursday arrived under a white, pitiless sky. At breakfast, Mrs. Walsh announced, "Tonight we dine with Lord Kettering and selected parties to settle terms. You will wear the ivory silk." Lily looked up from untouched tea. Selected by whom? By competence. A footman entered with a tray and one folded note. Mrs. Walsh took it first, scanned, and passed it across as though indulging a child. It was from Thomas, written in hurried, blotted lines. "Lily, was told by a man from Kettering's office there may be work for me in his carriage yard if I sign new papers and leave my current master's claim behind. They say this depends on your agreement at dinner. I don't understand any of it. Please send word. I am at Red Lion Yard till evening. Beneath that, in different ink and hand, Mrs. Walsh's. You see how readily matters may be mended." Lily's stomach turned. By noon the house was in controlled upheaval. Silver polished, extra candles brought up. Cook raging over turbot. Mrs. Walsh supervised with icy composure and kept Lily within sight at all times. Twice Lily tried to slip notes to servants. Twice Hill intercepted under orders. At 4, Doctor. Sibley returned to ensure Miss Walsh is equal to an evening's company. He took her pulse while avoiding her eyes and murmured to Mrs. Walsh in the hall. Lily caught only one phrase clearly: temporary seclusion, if distress presents. At 5:30, as her maid fastened the ivory gown, a kitchen scullery girl slipped in with a basket of fresh linens and nearly dropped it at Lily's feet. Tucked beneath the top cloth lay a card no bigger than a dance program. No seal. One line in Alistair's hand: Fenton and Greaves will come if called before witnesses. Hold until signatures are demanded. Fenton and Greaves, 2 trustees. If they came, if they were not stopped, if they had enough. Lily slid the card into her glove before Hill turned back from the washstand. Downstairs, the drawing room filled by increments. Lord Kettering arrived in dark blue superfine, smiling with the satisfaction of a man whose investment was maturing on schedule. Mr. Phelps hovered behind him with a leather portfolio. 2 gentlemen Lily recognized as legal men stood near the mantel, speaking softly with Mrs. Walsh. No Earls, no Northmere, not yet. Miss Walsh, Kettering said, taking her hand and holding it a second too long. I trust we are all in a more harmonious temper tonight. She met his gaze. Harmony is often just silence from the weaker party. He smiled wider. Let us hope you have no reason to feel weak then. Dinner progressed in gleaming courses and brittle conversation. Mrs. Walsh spoke of weather in Bath, Arabella's delicate constitution, the inconvenience of youthful excitability. Kettering discussed horseflesh and annuities. Lily answered when required and counted her own breaths. When the cloth was drawn, Mr. Phelps brought in the portfolio. Shall we proceed? Kettering asked. Mrs. Walsh inclined her head. At once. The legal clerk untied ribbons and spread papers across the polished table. Settlement articles, guardianship attestations, transfer schedules. At the top lay a fresh certificate signed by Dr. Sibley, its ink still dark. Lily could see enough to read the words susceptible to agitation and advisable oversight. Kettering lifted the pen and set it beside her plate. Your signature first, Miss Walsh, he said mildly. Then all is secured, including your brother's position, I believe. From the hall came the distant thud of the front knocker, once, then again, loud enough to cut through the hush. No servant moved immediately. Mrs. Walsh's eyes flicked to the door, calculating. The knocker sounded a third time, harder. Lily closed her hand over her glove, feeling the hidden card bite her palm, and looked at the unsigned papers while footsteps finally began to approach from the passage. Whether rescue or ruin had arrived, she could not yet tell. The front knocker sounded a third time, harder. No servant moved quickly enough for Mrs. Walsh's liking. She turned in her chair, voice sharpened a degree. Collins, if that is another tradesman. It is not a tradesman, Lily said. Every eye shifted to her. Kettering's hand remained on the pen. Miss Walsh. Lily rose from her place at the long dining table. Her knees felt briefly unreliable. She locked them and did not let it show. Admit them, she said to Collins, who had stopped in the doorway. They are expected. Mrs. Walsh's gaze snapped to her. By whom? By me. For the first time that evening, true feeling crossed Mrs. Walsh's face. Not panic, not yet, but irritation at a script altered without her consent. You forget yourself, she said. No, Lily answered. I remember myself. I came of age on Tuesday. You seem to have misplaced the date. A beat of stunned quiet. Kettering recovered first, with a dry little laugh. A legal technicality, surely. We may proceed with signatures and regularize. No, Lily said louder. We may not. Footsteps sounded in the passage. Collins reappeared, pale, and stepped aside. Mr. Fenton entered first, white-haired and severe in damp evening coat, followed by Mr. Greaves, broader and red-faced with discomfort. Behind them came Mr. Anstruther, the family solicitor, who had served Lily's father before her mother. Then, in a staggered line that made the room inhale as one, came the Earl of Wrexham, the Earl of Danebridge, the Earl of Harcourt, and, last, Alistair Reed. No rough coat now, but black formal evening dress, cut with brutal simplicity. Kettering half rose. "What is the meaning of this?" Fenton's voice did not waver. "The meaning, Lord Kettering, is fiduciary review. Sit down." Mrs. Walsh stood very still, fingers resting lightly on the back of her chair. "Mr. Fenton, this is an intrusion." "This is oversight," Fenton returned. Lily reached into her glove and drew out the small folded card Northmere had sent. She placed it beside Kettering's untouched pen. "I asked the trustees to attend before signatures were taken," she said, "because I have cause to contest the accounts managed in my name." Mrs. Walsh gave a small, almost bored exhale. "You are mistaken. Sit down. This is tedious." The old phrase, the old flattening command. For years it had worked. Tonight, Lily stayed standing. "I will stand," she said, "and I will be specific since you dislike drama." She turned to Anstruther. "Sir, if I state figures from memory and your documents confirm them, will the room accept I am not confused?" Anstruther inclined his head. "Proceed, Miss Walsh." Lily untied the narrow ribbon at her waist and pulled free a strip of paper she had sewn into the seam that afternoon. Her own cramped notes, copied and recopied until she could recite them blind. "On the 12th of March, 1815, she began, £200 were moved from Miss L. Walsh Trust to household contingencies. On the 26th of June, 1815, 140. On the 9th of January, 1816, 300. Her voice steadied as she went. "On each corresponding week, my mother informed me the trust was temporarily depleted, and Thomas Walsh's apprenticeship premium must be delayed." She looked to Fenton. "Were those withdrawals authorized by both trustees?" Fenton's jaw tightened. "No." Greaves wiped his brow. "I signed no such orders." Mrs. Walsh cut in, smooth as glass. "Trust accounts are often rebalanced. Miss Walsh has seen columns in imagined crimes." Danebridge stepped forward and set a packet on the table. "Registry abstracts from Lincoln's Inn filings over 4 years. Verified this afternoon." Harcourt added another. "And letters from Walsh and Pike, your correspondence, regarding transfers routed through a maintenance account." Wrexham placed a third bundle down with less gentleness than etiquette recommended. "Plus sworn statements from 2 former clerks who copied your instructions." Kettering's face lost colour by increments. "This is outrageous! Private papers!" "Are precisely what this dinner sought to finalise," Lily said. She lifted one sheet from Danebridge's packet, scanned and read aloud. "Household maintenance account, beneficiary Mrs. Marion Walsh. Disbursement reference linked to Miss Lily Walsh Trust instrument." The words seemed to thud in the air. Mrs. Walsh turned to Kettering. "You see what this is? A coordinated embarrassment engineered by men with political hobbies and a girl with overwrought nerves." Kettering seized the opening. "Exactly. Dr. Sibley has certified susceptibility to agitation. If Miss Walsh is unwell, we ought to continue under prudent guardianship." Lily took the physician's certificate from the top of the signing stack and held it up. "Shall I read this too?" she asked. "The one written before he examined me and paid for by your steward?" Phelps blanched. "My lord, I—" "Silence," Kettering hissed. Mrs. Walsh's voice sharpened. "Lily, put that down." Instead, Lily crossed to the sideboard, lit the taper, and held the certificate over the flame until the corner blackened and curled. Collins gasped. Mrs. Walsh took one involuntary step forward. Lily dropped the burning scrap into the silver wine bucket. It hissed out. "I am done being diagnosed into obedience," Lily said. Kettering slammed his palm on the table. "This is madness. The contract remains valid." "Not without my consent," Lily said. "And you do not have it." She turned deliberately to the trustees. "I refuse Lord Kettering publicly, here, before witnesses. I petition you to remove my mother as financial guardian pending full review and to freeze any transfer executed in my name after my majority." Fenton looked from Lily to the papers, then to Mrs. Walsh. "Marian?" At last, a crack. Not in Mrs. Walsh's composure, but in its polish. "Do not call me that as if we are intimates in some parish squabble. This girl is being manipulated." "By whom?" Lily asked. Mrs. Walsh pointed, sudden and precise, at Alistair. "By a liar who entered my house as a servant." The room pivoted to him. He did not look away. "It is true," he said. "I entered as Mr. Reed." "State your business, sir," Kettering snapped. Alistair's voice was calm. "Alistair Reed, Marquis of Northmere." Even knowing it, Lily felt the impact move through the table like a struck chord. Phelps stared openly. Greaves made a strangled sound. Northmere continued, "I have been gathering evidence in guardianship fraud cases linked to 3 firms, one of which handled Mrs. Walsh's transfers. But Miss Walsh's claims stand on documents and dates, not on my rank." Lily stepped back into the centre of the room before the title could swallow her moment. "You heard him," she said. "My case is mine. If every Earl here vanished tomorrow, the dead trustee's signature would still appear 18 months after his burial. The funds would still be gone. My brother would still be expelled from his apprenticeship tonight." She took Thomas's letter from her bodice and handed it to Fenton. "Read it." Fenton read in silence, then passed it to Greaves, who swore softly. Mrs. Walsh lifted her chin. "Apprenticeship fees are discretionary." "Not when taken from designated trust income," Anstruther said, finally stepping in with cold clarity. "You were custodian, madam, not owner." The balance tipped. Fenton drew a breath that sounded like decision. "By authority vested in us as trustees, I move immediate suspension of Mrs. Walsh's control over Miss Walsh's assets pending Chancery accounting." "Seconded," Greaves said hoarsely. Anstruther pulled a prepared instrument from his case, as if he had hoped not to use it, and expected to anyway. "Signatures required." Mrs. Walsh did not sit. "You dare." "I should have dared sooner," Fenton said. She did not fold. While Fenton signed, Mrs. Walsh moved with startling speed to the mantel bell and rang once, hard. Hill appeared, then Collins, then 2 footmen uncertain in the doorway. "Miss Walsh is unwell," Mrs. Walsh said crisply. "Take her upstairs." No one moved. "Now," she repeated. Lily looked at Collins, the same man who had shadowed her in rain, and held his gaze. "If anyone lays a hand on me, it will be assault witnessed by half the peerage." Collins dropped his eyes and stepped back. Mrs. Walsh pivoted to a new line of attack with no visible effort. "Very clever. Then we speak of reputation. You met this man," another knife-point glance at Northmere, "at night, unchaperoned, in an alley by White's. Shall I tell the room how many times? Shall we discuss compromise virtue and sudden accusations timed to secure a better offer?" It was the oldest weapon and still sharp. Kettering seized it greedily. Indeed, if her conduct is improper, her testimony is tainted. Lily felt heat rush to her face, then cool. "Yes," she said, "I met him in that alley, once, to demand truth after discovering his deception. I was angry, soaked to the skin, and in no mood for seduction. If you wish to make that into scandal, do so. It does not alter arithmetic." She faced Kettering fully. "You called marriage a purchase in this very house. Your steward asked for valuation before conversation. You are not offended by impropriety. You are offended by losing a bargain. Danebridge coughed into his hand to hide what might have been a laugh. Harcourt did not bother to hide his smile. Mrs. Walsh's tone turned icy. You admit clandestine meetings and expect legal minds to prefer your story over mine? No, Lily said. I expect legal minds to prefer records, which is why your cleared cabinet matters. That landed. Anstruther looked up sharply. Cleared? Every ledger gone within 48 hours, Lily said, after my movements were monitored and before tonight's signatures. She turned to the footman in the doorway. Collins, who carried trunks from the morning room yesterday? Collins froze. Mrs. Walsh's stare could have frozen blood. Lily waited. At Madam's order, he said. 2 leather dispatch cases to Mr. Pike's office. Anstruther's pen stopped. Mr. Pike being your legal correspondent, Mrs. Walsh? Confidential counsel is my right. After notice of dispute, removal may constitute obstruction, Anstruther said. I advise retrieval under seal. Kettering pushed back his chair with a scrape. This is becoming intolerable. It became intolerable years ago, Lily answered. He rounded on Fenton. If you proceed with this farce, I shall sue for damages to my name. Harcourt finally spoke, silky and lethal. Your name has survived worse things than an unsigned engagement. Kettering. Do not gamble it against forged signatures. Wrexham added, walk away. Kettering looked from one Earl to the next and saw, perhaps for the first time, that no one here would shelter him. He snatched up his gloves. Very well, I withdraw. Put it in writing, Lily said. He stared at her, then at Anstruther, already extending paper. With visible disgust, Kettering signed a statement declining all marital negotiations with Miss Lily Walsh and waiving claim to any associated settlement expectations. When he left, Phelps followed like a dropped shadow. Still, Mrs. Walsh stood. Fenton set down his signed suspension and faced her. Marian, pending accounting, you are barred from directing Miss Walsh's trust, from dispersing related income, and from acting as guardian over any female relations fortune under instruments I oversee. An interim allowance for household expenses will be managed through Anstruther. Mrs. Walsh's lips thinned. You cannot bar me in perpetuity. Petition Chancery, Anstruther said. With luck and honest books, perhaps you regain partial discretion in 10 years. For the first time all evening, something like weariness crossed her face. Then it flattened again. She looked at Lily as if appraising weather damage to a property she no longer owned. This melodrama has cost you your place, she said. No respectable house will forget tonight. Lily met her evenly. Then they will have to remember the numbers too. Mrs. Walsh gave a tiny nod, almost courteous in its finality. Very well. Not surrender. Acknowledgement of a concluded transaction. She left the room without haste. No one tried to stop her. The door closed. Lily remained standing another second, then sat abruptly as the strength went out of her legs. The candle flames blurred. She was aware of voices, Fenton instructing Anstruther, Greaves asking for brandy, Harcourt murmuring something kind to Collins, but none of it landed until Northmere came no nearer than the opposite end of the table and said, quietly, You were magnificent. Lily looked up, throat burning, and managed, I was angry. Yes, he said, and exact, the best kind of dangerous. By midnight, the house no longer belonged to one will. Anstruther and 2 clerks occupied the library, drafting notices and sealing inventories. Fenton sat with ledgers newly retrieved from Pike's office under written protest. Greaves, shaken into usefulness, sent a rider to Red Lion Yard with funds and authority to reinstate Thomas before dawn. Lily stood in the hall outside the library doors, barefoot now, shoes abandoned somewhere between crisis and conclusion. Wax and ink scented the air. She felt emptied and overfull at once. Northmere approached with a glass of water. Drink. She obeyed because deciding not to felt too hard. Thomas, she asked. Wrexham went himself, he said. Your brother will be back at his bench tomorrow morning if the master has any sense. A breath she had been holding for days finally left her. She leaned back against the wall and closed her eyes. I thought I had lost, she said, when the packet vanished, when Arabella was sent away. I thought I have never felt so. She searched for the word. Hollow. You kept moving while hollow, he said. That is courage, not absence of fear. She opened her eyes. Do not make me noble tonight. I nearly signed just to get Thomas fed. I know, his voice roughened. That is why coercion works. It dresses itself as mercy. They stood in silence as a clerk passed carrying sealed envelopes. After a moment, Lily said, Will they ruin me anyway? Some will try. By breakfast, Harcourt will be telling half Mayfair that you exposed a theft with more composure than most ministers show in committee. Danebridge will repeat the forged signature detail to anyone who likes scandal with facts. Wrexham will glower at doubters until they reconsider their opinions for the sake of their bones. Despite herself, she laughed, brief and tired. Strategic gossip, she said. Society's preferred legal instrument. She sobered. Arabella. Fenton has sent for her return under his authority. Your mother cannot exile her now. The library door opened. Anstruther stepped out, ink on his cuffs. Miss Walsh, I require your signature on interim disbursement terms. Lily took the papers, scanned, and frowned. This allowance includes my personal account routed through household disbursement. No, separate account at Child & Co. in my sole name, with direct quarterly statements. Anstruther blinked, then nodded slowly. As you wish. And Thomas's premiums paid directly to his master, not through family intermediaries. Also done. She signed. When Anstruther retreated, Northmere watched her with an expression she could not yet read fully. Pride, relief, something more dangerous. I mean what I said in the rain, she told him. No rescue parcel, no title shields. He inclined his head. Understood. Good. Because tomorrow I begin reviewing every line myself. Then tomorrow, London's accountants should pray. 5 days later, Lily sat in a hired room above a stationer's near Chancery Lane, sleeves rolled to the elbow, a stack of petitions before her, and sunlight on the inkstand. It was not her permanent office, only a borrowed chamber Fenton had arranged while household control shifted and Mrs. Walsh's settlement terms were finalised. But the table was hers for the afternoon, and no one could lock its drawers but her. Across from her sat Thomas, thinner than she remembered, fingers stained with metal filings even on a day off. He had read the reinstatement letter 3 times, then tucked it in his coat like a relic. You look like father when he did sums, he said, watching her sort columns. Lily smiled without looking up. God preserve me from his bookkeeping flourishes. A knock sounded. Arabella entered in travelling dress. Cheeks flushed from haste, then stopped and burst into tears at the sight of Lily and Thomas together. Oh, I hated Bath, she sobbed into Lily's shoulder. Aunt made me drink broth and embroider cows. Thomas, startled, patted Arabella's sleeve as if calming a skittish horse. Lily held her sister until the sobs eased. When Arabella drew back, she wiped her face and said fiercely, I told Aunt everything. She said Mamma always sounded like a church bell in winter. I did not know what she meant, but now I do. Lily kissed her forehead. Now you need not know alone. There was another knock, measured this time. Northmere stood at the threshold, hat in hand, not entering until Lily nodded permission. Arabella looked between them and, with a sudden conspiratorial wisdom, grabbed Thomas's arm. "Come, we must buy sealing wax. Urgently." Thomas frowned. "Do we?" "Yes." She hauled him out, shutting the door behind them with theatrical gentleness. Lily arched a brow. Subtle. Terrifyingly, Northmere agreed. He remained by the door as if uncertain of his right to come further. Lily gestured to the opposite chair. "You may sit, my lord. It is only arithmetic in here." He sat. For a moment, neither spoke. Street noise drifted up, cartwheels, a hawker calling pears, life indifferent to private reckonings. At last he said, "I have wanted to speak without witnesses and without strategy between us." "Then speak." He drew a breath. "I loved my sister badly. By which I mean I loved her and failed her. Since her death, I have mistrusted every impulse that feels personal, because personal impulses cloud timing, and timing gets people hurt." His hands were clasped too tightly on his hat brim. "With you, I was already compromised before I admitted it. I watched you in that house and admired you. Then I relied on your unpredictability as a tactic and told myself, necessity excused deception. It did not." Lily listened, very still. "I am sorry," he said simply. "Not performatively, not strategically. I am sorry for the lie. I am sorry for the cost." She let the silence sit long enough to test it. "I was furious," she said. "I am not entirely unfurious now." A corner of his mouth moved. "Fair. But I believed you in the alley when you said the rest must come from me, and in that dining room you did not take the center when you could have." She met his gaze. That mattered. He nodded once, as if accepting terms of a treaty he hoped might become peace. She leaned back, folding her hands over the ledger before her. "What do you want from me, Alistair? Not what you think proper. What you want." The use of his given name struck him visibly. He answered without evasions. "I want to court you openly. I want to be where you are, even when you are cross and covered in ink. I want the right to ask for your hand when you are ready, and the grace to wait if you are not." His voice dropped. "I do not want to be another structure around you." Lily felt something uncoil in her chest, caution still present but no longer strangling. "I am not ready to marry this month, or this season because anyone expects it," she said. "I have accounts to establish. I am drafting terms for a legal fund for women trapped in guardianship disputes. I intend to supervise it myself." "Good. You say that now." "I say it after seeing you cross-examine an earl with a burnt physician's certificate in your hand. I am under no illusion you will become decorative." She laughed, the sound unexpectedly bright. "Very well," she said. "You may court me. Openly. No disguises, no back doors, no engineered dances." He winced. Deserved. "And if ever you withhold truth to protect me, I shall put it in writing and send copies to Harcourt for public recital." His expression, finally, broke into an unguarded smile. "Terrifying terms. I accept." He stood then, hesitated, and offered his hand across the ledger-strewn table. Lily looked at it, then placed her own in his. Warm, steady, no performance. He lifted her fingers once, not quite a kiss, more vow than flirtation. Outside, Arabella's laugh rose from the street below, followed by Thomas protesting the price of wax. Lily did not move her hand away. "Come to Belham's Musicale on Thursday," Alistair said. "I will ask you for one dance in full view of everyone, and this time I will know exactly why." Lily held his gaze. "Ask for two. I dislike unfinished sets." At the solicitor's chambers 2 weeks later, Mrs. Walsh signed the settlement in a room that smelled of dust and leather and old power. Present: Fenton, Greaves, Anstruther, Lily, and by Lily's insistence, Arabella and Thomas. Northmere waited in the outer office, not intruding. Anstruther read each clause aloud: restoration of misappropriated principal and income to Miss Lily Walsh's sole account. Immediate payment of Thomas Walsh's apprenticeship arrears and tools release. Formal censure and permanent bar under trustee instruments and filed notice, preventing Mrs. Marion Walsh from serving as financial guardian over any female relation's fortune. Provision for Arabella's portion to be administered by independent trustees upon her majority. Mrs. Walsh signed each page in the same clean hand she used for invitations. When it was done, Anstruther pushed the final copy toward Lily. She signed, sanded, and set down the pen. Mrs. Walsh rose. For a moment she looked at her elder daughter not with hatred exactly, but with baffled distance, as if Lily had become a language she refused to learn. "Very well," she said. "Take it all." She left without embracing Arabella, without glancing at Thomas. The door clicked shut. Arabella exhaled shakily. Thomas muttered, "Good riddance," then looked guilty in front of solicitors and added, "Beg pardon." Fenton almost smiled. None required. That evening at Lady Bellam's, the same chandeliers threw the same ruthless light over silk and jewels. But when Lily entered on Northmere's arm, Lady Bellam announced in carrying tones, "Miss Lily Walsh, whose composure has improved the standards of half this city." Laughter, approving this time. Wrexham bowed deeply. Danebridge asked after her legal drafts with genuine interest. Harcourt kissed her hand and murmured, "You have made integrity fashionable. I resent and admire it." Across the room, two matrons who had once called her a relation now angled for introduction to Arabella, newly returned and suddenly prized. Northmere leaned close. Strategic gossip complete. "Not complete," Lily said. "Still work to do." The following Monday, in the front room of a modest house she had leased in Bloomsbury, her house, her lock, her ledgers, Lily met with 3 women and 1 anxious uncle regarding the newly established Walsh Fund for independent petitioners. Ink blotted, babies cried, testimonies trembled into steadiness. Lily listened, asked for dates, names, witnesses, paper trails. At noon, Thomas arrived with a repaired writing slope as a housewarming gift. Arabella brought flowers and opinions about curtains. Fenton sent bank confirmations. Greaves sent, awkwardly, a basket of pears. Near dusk, Alistair came by appointment. No disguise, announced properly by a footman who did not need coaching to say her name. In the small drawing room between account books and a vase of late roses, he took out a ring. Not ostentatious, a clear stone in a plain setting, and said, "Miss Lily Walsh, will you marry me when you choose the date?" She looked at the ring, then at him. "I have already chosen the date," she said. "The day after we file the fund's first annual accounts." He laughed, startled and delighted. "Pragmatic and romantic. I'm outmatched." "Yes," she said and held out her hand. "But you may keep up." Weeks later, at another crowded assembly, Lily stood beneath candlelight while names were called at the top of the stairs. A young girl in lavender, hovering behind her mother, looked frightened in the way Lily once had. Lily turned, smiled, and asked the girl softly, "What is your name?" "Miss Jane Foster," the girl whispered. "Then let us make sure they hear it." When the majordomo looked to Lily for introductions, she spoke clearly, every syllable deliberate. "Miss Jane Foster, my guest, of consequence." And when the first dance began, 3 earls watched with amusement as the Marquis of Northmere crossed the floor, bowed to Lily in full view of the room, and asked, without disguise, without bargain, without rescue, "Will you dance?"